So, do you feel when you're in your running program or in any other program, fatigue, stuck in your progress, unmotivated, or in pain? And the question is, well, what does that mean? In college, I rode for about a year. And for me, I was a pretty athletic, motivated athletically and want to push myself. And I remember halfway during the season, I was losing weight and I kept training, but I was feeling fatigued, achy, and I was not sleeping. Now, I had a roommate that was snoring all the time, so that didn't help. But also, my heart was always racing. And I was like, what's going on? And so I was like, hey, I got to train harder. And so I'd keep training to a point where I was just exhausted all the time, falling asleep in class. And looking back at it, I knew something was off. Like I trained in junior high to high school, and this was college. I was pretty advanced in it, I would say, relatively speaking. But I knew something in my body was just not right, and I was just fatigued a lot. So this was my first experience with overtraining. And literally, I quit actually because my body was shutting down more than midway through the season because I just couldn't go on any further. And thank God I did because my grades shot up and I was feeling the energy again. But that was my first learning experience with overtraining. And in that mindset, and most runners I can relate to this, is especially if they have injury, like heck, if I stop running or training, am I going to get weaker right away? Am I going to lose all the gains I've had? And I understand that mindset, and I've had that experience, a few times. But that was my mindset, so I kept saying, keep going. And I see a lot of running clients, they just don't stop the training program because they think they're going to get weaker or they think they're going to lose their performance, and it actually hinders their performance by not listening to these symptoms. Maybe your legs feel heavy, maybe you feel unmotivated, and maybe you have this achiness and pain that just is not going away. 65% of elite runners experience some form of overtraining during their career. And that makes sense because they are just pushing their bodies hard because they want to be that 1% better than their competitor. So they're going to try to optimize their performance. Recreational is about 33% because they do it, on and off. So it's a lower stat. And the beginners usually have training error, go too hard, too soon, too fast. And so they're kind of inexperienced with that. It makes sense that overtraining is common with a higher level and is often worse by life stressors and a rapid increase in training intensity. This is very important. Like when I was rowing, I wasn't sleeping, and so that was really hindering my recovery. So life stressors like stress itself is an emotional experience that triggers cortisol that breaks down tissue and increases heart rate. It could affect sleeping, which affects recovery. So it's not just physical, it's also emotional and mental recovery as well. Training intensity, yes, high mileage and fast progressions, and that's called training error. That's the most common thing I see is people go too hard, too soon, too fast with little recovery, and the tissues break down and they get fatigued mentally, emotionally, and the bodies just are not recovering. If you're that perfectionist, like the runners that like I have to get those miles in, if not, like I'm failing. For me too, like with rowing, I want to get stronger all the time. And I felt like I had to keep pushing myself, and I thought rest was for the weak. So ignoring fatigue is a huge issue. Fatigue is your body's way of saying, hey, I need a little bit of recovery here. And also just strictly recovery deficits. If you're just maybe taking one day off every 2 or 3 weeks, for example, or the recovery runs are too fast or too intense, that could be an issue because you don't have the full recovery. Nutritional gaps, huge. If you're just at a caloric deficit when you're training, you're not able to rebuild and replenish your tissues and central nervous system and emotional state. Nutrition is huge in recovery. Proteins and, of course, adequate water and the nutrients to keep you going have a higher risk than your moderate intensity people due to training error, going too hard, too soon, too fast, while high level athletes just keep pushing and keep pushing. And training approach, again, falling under training error is that all the workouts are hard. And I actually fell into this category. I didn't understand recovery days, so they'd either be intense or moderately intense. And I was feeling like crap. My legs were heavy. I did not feel like working out, and I didn't appreciate those recovery times. To note, the body doesn't distinguish between physical and mental stress. So your body can be breaking down because you're pushing yourself hard physically, but also mentally, not sleeping, just high stress level, like those cortisol levels. So signs and symptoms, I went over a few of them just with my personal experience, but let's go different categories of symptoms to see if you can relate. So psychological or mental signs, is persistent fatigue. Even after you're resting and you still feel tired, you're definitely overtraining. You have irritability and mood swings, decreased motivation, trouble concentrating, increased stress and anxiety, or poor sleep and insomnia. Speaking of the physical signs, ongoing muscle soreness or heavy legs, decline in performance, increased resting heart rate. And I think normal resting heart rate's about 50s and 60s. If you're better trained, it tends to be lower. So getting that vital sign is a good just understanding of where you're at. So if you have to check in with your resting heart rate to see how you're doing, it could be a good metric to have. Loss of appetite or unexpected weight changes. And again, mine was weight loss. I do feel most people with overtraining are at a weight loss. And hormonal disruptions. Things aren't regulated. You're not sleeping, you're not replenishing your body's systems, and things are just out of whack. And if you experience this, the psychological and physical signs, you just don't feel like yourself. You don't feel like that you want to do much in terms of training. So please don't ignore these signs. It's a huge flag to rest, even if you have midway through your training program and you have a race in 6 weeks. I tell people I'd rather you, one, enjoy the race, and two, be able to walk and not limp to the start line. And lastly, training specific signs. Again, workouts feel harder than usual at the same intensity. And then longer recovery time between sessions. So it takes a while. Like instead of one day, you have like 2 or 3 days to kind of feel normal again. And the hallmark signs of plateau or regression despite consistent effort and injury, stress fractures, tendonitis, like maybe Achilles tendonitis, patella tendonitis, calf strains, hamstring strains, shin splints, all common injuries to runners, that those are signs that there could be overtraining. And again, other factors too. Maybe it's not overtraining, maybe there's training error. Running form could be an issue, or maybe you're not strong enough or flexible enough in certain tissues, causing more stress and strain. So again, there are other factors, but usually when people have pain, at least in the beginning, I just say, hey, shut it down, let it recover, and then we can understand it and push it accordingly. So a huge question I get, of course, is, well, I'm taking off, so how long should I take off? So if you had, say, pain, depending on the pain, but my general rule of thumb is, look, let's take 2 weeks off, get it under control, and then we can rebuild it. But if you don't have like pain and it's just feeling like, okay, I feel a little fatigued, a little off, take a few days off and see how you feel. If the symptoms are getting worse, like you're not sleeping and your resting heart rate is elevated and you have a lot of just fatigue, even after a few days, you got to keep, taking more time off. When you're taking the time off, you can still exercise in a way. You just have to take it easy. So if it's a mild overuse issue, then you do like easy running. And if it's moderate overtraining symptoms, again, 2 to 4 weeks off and not running, but more of a light walking movement. And then if it's severe, if you're like really fatigued and you just cannot recover and you have all those symptoms of not sleeping and lots of aches and pains, you may have to take more time off of just complete rest. It's very rare. I don't think I've actually ever seen anyone with severe recovery, but I see a lot of people with mild. So how do you know when to return to running? One, look at your metrics, your resting heart rate. If it's normal for 2 weeks, and again, everyone's a little different, so I would take some kind of baseline. 40s is good, but 50s and 60s tend to be normal, resting heart rate per minute. So see how that metric is, and you can do that by just holding your pulse near your wrist, count how many beats you feel in 10 seconds, and then times it by 6. Or just, of course, everyone has those smartwatches, so you can check out your heart rate there. Do you also notice your sleep and mood improving? Do you feel less insomnia, deep sleep? Do you feel lighter? Do you feel less irritable? That's a good sign. And the motivation returns to working out again. I like running, but also like lifting weights. And for me, I've implemented every 3 months, I take 1 week off. When I say off, I'm usually like out and about, just walking, maybe hiking, but I'm not lifting so my bodies can recover. And when I do that, I feel so good getting back into the game again. So yeah, motivation, it's a little bit subjective, but you'll know when you know. And if you're still on the fence, give it another day or two. And doing it safely. So cardio, if it's just mild to moderate symptoms, walking, biking, swimming lightly for about 20, 30 minutes. So that's one if people want to take some time off running to give their legs a rest. Number two, the 50% rule is when you're beginning your routine again, so say you take a couple weeks off, start with 50% of your previous volume intensity. So if you're doing 20 miles a week, do 10. See how that feels on your body. The big mistake I see with a lot of runners recovering from injury is once they recover or once they're pain free, they go back to what they were doing pretty quickly and they get overused again. So it's a little bit tricky because when you start to feel good, people push themselves what they were doing prior, and it may be too much for the body. So start a little more conservatively, see how you feel in terms of emotional, in terms of physical, in terms of motivation and fatigue, and then you can go up from there. And number three, you gradually build that program, generally speaking, 10% per week to avoid injury. Now there's a nuance, and I won't explain it here, but also intensity is also a factor. The point being is you don't want to increase it too fast. And of course, monitor how you doing. Here are some other light activities as you are in the recovery time of just letting your body rest from running, biking, yoga, swimming, walking, hiking, all great stuff. Keep your body moving, but also allow your tissues a chance to heal, especially your nervous system, psychological, emotional system, and get your cortisol levels back down.